There was an anthropologist who was studying a primitive tribe in South America that years earlier had been reached by a Christian missionary. After having lived among the tribe for several weeks, the anthropologist met the tribe's leader. And he said, "You have a wonderful culture here, but it's a shame that that missionary came and infected your tribe with his religion." And the chief replied, "See that rock? That's where we would break the skulls of our enemies. You see that tree? And that's where we would sacrifice them to our God. And if we had not learned that Christ was our Lord, you would be our dinner tonight." He was giving testimony of the change that knowing Christ had brought about in their lives. I once spoke to you about having a certain fear of the Lord. The Bible talks many times about fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom. One of the major mistakes that the Israelites made during their years of wandering the desert and many times thereafter is that they consistently forgot what God had done for them. Many of the prophets and kings had to remind the people what God had done for them. Even the apostles had to remind the people what God had done for them and how they had sinned against God. But why did they do that? I believe the reason that they did that is because when we remember what God has done for us, we are reminded of His greatness and His power, and we can have that sense of awe renewed in our hearts. And I want us to see some of the reasons why it's important to remember all that God has done for us. We're going to look at a few places in the Bible where God's people are reminded of God, what God has done for them. Joshua chapter 4. It's a great place. If you like to turn in your Bibles, you can turn there. We're going to start 4 verses here, 21 through 24. And Joshua had been instructed by God to have the priests pick out 12 stones and to stack them as a memorial. And Joshua said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what He had already done to the Red Sea, when He dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God." They had gotten to the Jordan. This was a momentous occasion for them because all of the adults had died out because of their unwillingness to be obedient to God and their fear of the land over fear of God and trust in God. And so God had caused them to wander until everyone who had left Egypt that was 21 or older had died, other than Joshua, Caleb, Aaron, and Moses. And then Aaron and Moses died. Thereafter, they didn't get to go in either. So here they are at the Jordan River, and it was during that time, kind of like what we're seeing in Florida, where they have the floodplains, and the Jordan would get fast and furious, and you couldn't walk over it, much less carrying carts. Again, it's hard for us to understand this, but the people of Israel were millions. Imagine that, 1 million people. We can see that now, can't we? How many of you have been watching Florida? And how many million people trying to get out of Florida? 5.4 million people? Is that what I saw? 5.4 million people trying to get out. They have cars and they still can't get out quick enough. Imagine how long it takes 1 million people and 3 million flocks to get across a river. And so God told the priests, he said, get in, just start walking down into the water. And the second their feet touched, the ground dried up. And I don't mean like dry as in the water left, but it was muddy. I mean every ounce of water was gone from there, so they could walk across on dry ground. If God had not done that, there's no way all those cars could get through, right? I remember watching all those old westerns, right, where the wagons were coming, and they would go through these things, and they would break down, or get stuck in mud. There was no mud. God dried it completely up, and they went over on dry ground. And yet, the Israelites were prone to forget what God had done for them. Seemingly, when we read it, it seems like moments ago, right? If you're reading through Genesis, we dried up the Red Sea, and they're bragging about water like a chapter later. The Israelites are entering a whole new era of their lives. The era of the promised land. Wow. God had promised this to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph. He had promised this to their forefathers. And finally, they were entering in. Canaan is not a picture of heaven. Don't get that mistaken. If Canaan were a picture of heaven, there would be no Canaanites to battle. Because, see, when we get to heaven, all the battles are over. Canaan is a picture of the Christian life. We still have battles, don't we? The war's been won. Christ already won the war. But we still have battles. And so this is a picture of the Christian life, and God's people were entering a time where they would be put to the test, just as each and every one of us are. But you know what? They wouldn't have to be tested alone. God would go before them, and Joshua wanted to remind them, as long as they were obedient to God's commands, they would never battle alone. He wanted to renew their sense of awe because it would enable them to stand firm against their enemies. Joshua chose this momentous event of crossing over the Jordan into the land of Canaan as a point of reminder or a memorial. You guys know that memorial, right? We remember that. Show the other one. I'll bet nobody here but Stevie and I has been to this, right? This is actually Window Rock, Arizona, not far from where I lived on the reservation. That's the head of the Nazarene Navajo Nation, and that's a memorial to all of the code talkers. And I believe the last one died just this last year. We set up memorials to remember, and that's exactly what Joshua was doing here. We should remember what God has already done for us when we're entering a new time in our lives. It's scary, isn't it? I know there are some of you, Seth and EJ and Ryan, did you go to a new school not a new school, but you bumped up? No, not yet? That time when you end up going for me it was worse. I changed schools every 2 years because we moved around a lot. So I got used to that, but, new job, new school. All of that becomes just a little scary. But see, if we remember how God has blessed us and how He has taken care of us and what He's done for us, if we continually remind ourselves of that, then having strength and faith is much easier. In fact, we were reading this morning in our Bible study, going through the Bible. He told Solomon, David told Solomon, be strong, be courageous, and act. That's pretty good advice. Be strong, be courageous, and act. And we can do that because God is with us. Let's look at what King David wrote about remembering God's deeds in our lives. Psalm 71. You also have a psalm in your bulletin, I think. Part of a psalm, and you can look at that as well. Here in 71, he says, as for me, I will always have hope. I will praise you more and more. My mouth will tell of your righteous deeds and of your saving acts all day long. Though I know not how to relate them all, I will come and proclaim your mighty acts, sovereign Lord. I will proclaim your righteous deeds, yours alone. Since my youth, God, you have taught me, and to this day I declare your marvelous deeds. Even when I'm old and gray, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation, your mighty acts to all who are to come. David understood the need to tell about what God had done for him. Not only is it beneficial for us to remember what God has done for us, David shows us the importance of declaring God's goodness to us, to all those around us. What does declaring mean? You have to speak it out, right? You have to tell. And the importance of telling. He says, I will tell, I will declare of your great and mighty works all day long. In our study of the Church Awakening, we have seen the importance of worship in our lives. Declaring God's deeds in our lives is an important part of worship. And an essential part of a contagious church. Because see, if you tell others what God has done for you, they will see the miraculous in your lives. You give God benefit for all that you are and all that you have. They're going to see that. Telling others about what God has done for you is also a testimony to the lost. Luke chapter 8. I love this. This is different than a lot of other places. Luke chapter 8, 38 through 39. Jesus has just rid a man of demons, cast them out of this man. And the man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. You see, Jesus was telling him that you're going to have far greater impact on the world if you go tell people what I've done for you than you will be if you just follow me around. We can stay in church all day long. And I've been in some Hispanic churches where they actually do. Right? Where you go at like 8:30 in the morning and you're not home till 7 or 8 at night. We can stay in church all week long. But you know what? That means no one hears what God has done for you. You can't stay on the mountaintops. You have to go to the valleys. because that's where the people live. Right? Finally, and when a preacher says finally, that means absolutely nothing. As we learned in our study of Revelation, proclaiming our faith in God and the great things that God has done for us will give us victory. Revelation 12:11 says, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. See, these martyrs were being killed, but even as they were being killed, they proclaimed the name of Jesus. And they proclaimed what God had done for them. They refused to not tell. That's how important this is. Over and over, God tells us that what we speak is as important to Him and important for us and those around us. What you say makes a difference. What you do makes a difference. What you say can be a deterrent to Satan, who is constantly attacking us. Remember when he attacked Job? There's one incredible, I think God has a quite quirky sense of humor. But when he allowed allowed Satan to attack Job, did you notice one person that never got harmed? His wife. He left Job's wife alone. She didn't have any health issues, and she told Job, why don't you just curse God and die? Oh, lovely woman. I think Satan did that on purpose. Why don't you just curse God and die? But Job wouldn't do that. He said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. What you say makes a difference. I believe that what we say to each other and to the world will make a difference.